Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to meet you in offline and online on the platform of our university. So today we are going to have an international conference within the project of Tashkent Monnet Center of Excellence for European Studies. And today it will be about the European Union Central Asian relations, pragmatism, building resilience and connectivity. I will talk about a little about our Center for Excellence. It is the first and the only Center of Excellence in Uzbekistan and beyond in Central Asia. We're going to have some educational and research programs within this project. We will have some research in the political, economical, and legal spheres. We will support our young generation, our students, our young research in the field of the research in political sphere and economical sphere and legal between on the theme of connection of European Union and Central Asia. And we will have some different types of subjects at the master degree programs. It will be substantive law on European Union, history and development of European political and philosophical thoughts, and WTO, EU trade standards, correlative teaching. So after that, we will have some research proceedings, roundtables, conferences, and we will be happy to see all of you on our platform within this project, from the scholars, experts from European Union, from Uzbekistan, from Central Asia. We will welcome all the Central Asian institutions, scholars at our universities. So I hope today our conference will be interesting, fruitful, and full of discussions and open-minded discussions. So welcome. I will announce that it is open, and I want to give a floor to Head of Division of the Department for Cooperation with European countries and European Union institutions from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Aybek Shahavidinov. So, Aybek, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Do you hear me well, colleagues?
Yes.
Yes. Well. Thank you. It's a great pleasure and honor today to attend this indeed important event, which is happening kind of in the margins of the larger conference, which is going to be held in Uzbekistan starting as of tomorrow. This is a very important conference, which is brought by the initiative of our president. It's related to the connectivity between two important regions, which historically had been bounded with each other. This is Central Asia and South Asia. In fact, this is a conference which doesn't only relate to them. It's very much in line with the European Union policy. Since 2018, the European Union has adopted a strategy for connectivity, connecting Europe and Asia. And this conference is, and its kind of objectives, is in very much in line with this with this document. And therefore, Uzbekistan is very glad that European Union will be represented at this conference at the highest possible political level, which is the High Representative for Foreign Policy and Security, Vice President of the European Commission, His Excellency Mr. Josep Borrell. This is a very high level, and we very much appreciate it. We also will have, Mr. Borrell will also be joined by 3 EU special representatives. This is EU Special Representative for Central Asia, the new one, who had recently started her activity as the EUSR. Also, there will be EUSR on connectivity, Ms. Valhutin, as well as EUSR on Afghanistan. Therefore, we believe that this is a very timely initiative of the European Union to attend this event on a high level, because the dynamics between our relations is absolutely not as it used to be before. It's absolutely on a qualitatively new level. The relations are boosting. We are working and we're trying to complete as soon as possible the negotiations on the partnership and cooperation agreement, enhanced one, between Uzbekistan and the European Union, EPCA. We had 8 rounds, and we are almost completed several chapters. Now, the largest chapter is trade, and we're still working on that. Due to the pandemic, last year we had some problems in organizing several regional events, EU Central Asia format, and therefore this year we have a very dense program. The first, in September, we will have hopefully the visit of our foreign minister to Brussels for the Cooperation Council, EU Uzbekistan. Then in October, there will be a EU Central Asia ministerial meeting, which will be co-chaired by Mr. Borrell as well. We will have, it also had been brought by the initiative of Uzbekistan, the first EU Central Asia Tourism Forum, which will be co-chaired by, hopefully by
Yes, Oybeke, it's a little bit technical problems, I think, with your internet connection. We have.
Yes, we just lost the ministry.
Yes, we lost the connection with you. Hopefully he will join us. Due to the pandemic, we have these problems to see each other in class, but we have this opportunity to meet each other from different sides of the world when we don't have the opportunity to meet each other in person. So, Oybeke, the floor is yours. You are online now.
Despite the conference on connectivity, we have a connectivity problem somewhere around. So this is not my fault. I'm very sorry for that. So basically, the agenda is very dense. And indeed, I believe that after this visit of Mr. Borrell, this will be the first visit of Mr. Borrell as in his capacity of the High Representative to Central Asia and of course to Uzbekistan. Nevertheless, before we had two visits in 2018 and 2017 of Ms. Mogherini, who also was an High Representative HRVP before Mr. Borrell, and for the two conferences on Central Asian prosperity and development, as well as on Afghanistan. So basically, we are looking forward for a very fruitful cooperation with the European Union, and I'm sure that today's roundtable or workshop or conference, whatever we call it, will obviously give its analytical and scientific impetus to further strengthening and bringing up new recommendations for development of the cooperation between Uzbekistan and the European Union, its member states, as well as in the regional format, EU and Central Asia. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Sorry for being too long.
It was very great. Thank you very much, Mr. Shahabidinov, for your informative, comprehensive greeting speech. Thank you. Stay with us. So we are going to begin our first plenary session, and it will be on European Union Central Asia cooperation between the vulnerable past and resilient future. So our moderator for this plenary session will be Mr. Ulubek Hasanov. He is professor, head of the department of the University of World Economy and Diplomacy. So, Ulubek, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. So, dear colleagues, so our first plenary session is devoted for the European Union Central Asia cooperation between the vulnerable past and resilient future. Having said that, we have to keep in mind that the period of last 30 years, this year, all these Central Asian nations are going to mark the very important date in their history, 30 years of their independence and sovereignty. Then we have to keep in mind that the initial period of their independence was quite difficult because for most of them, the foreign policy and national security issues were new. But the time has passed, and we know that the process of development was not easy for them. But anyway, they became quite mature nations in the issues of national security and international relations. they became full, quite active members of regional and global relations. And in that context, we have to keep in mind that the most important partners of CA nations were Central European Union and European nations. They quite closely cooperated and assisted them in the process of their economic, political, and social development through the myriad of different projects and programs. So having said that, we have to keep in mind that the issues of the resilience and capacity building is central for Central Asian nations. As Central Asians, we have to keep in mind that the elements of the connectivity is going to be very focal for them. And for these issues, we're going to discuss it more in the wide context with our different partners. So in the first, I want to introduce to you Mr. Andris Prūts from Latvia, who is the director of Latvian Institute of International Affairs. Welcome.
Thank you.
And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good morning, dear colleagues. Thank you for inviting me. I just learned about the conference a few hours ago, but I was happy to jump in and to participate, and it again shows the connectivity and improvisation is part of the agenda. But I am very happy and express my appreciation, also congratulations to University of the World Economy and Diplomacy, also to the European Jean Monnet Center of Excellence, European Studies. So I think it's excellent event before also the big conference. So I would assume it's a warm up in a sense, intellectual in many ways. I would be very short because I see the long list of speakers and participants, and of course I'll be also happy to have a bouquet of different presentations, but I will focus very shortly on two resiliences and one vulnerability, since the panel is focused on resiliences and vulnerabilities. First of all, about resilience within Central Asia. I would underline that internal dynamics within Central Asian societies and regional national preferences and choices are decisive. Central Asian countries have made remarkable progress in the last decades to become much more resilient. And I think the increasing resilience, and also I would add self-confidence, being able to speak from the positions of self-confidence and strength actually has contributed to cooperation within the region and beyond. So I think once you feel yourself resilient, you can also engage in cooperation. So you are much more open. I think we see these in the last years. Diversity remains among the countries, we know it, even though, of course, regionalization has taken place, but I would underline, not because I'm in Uzbekistan, because I would so define myself as a partial Central Asian expert, because Uzbekistan's leadership has been certainly instrumental. The reforms implemented in Uzbekistan in recent years have significant implications for the standing and perceptions of the whole Central Asian region. So I would say what happens in Uzbekistan is a game changer for the whole region. So there is certainly correlation among those developments on national level and also on regional dynamics. But at the same time, of course, I would say that all societies face a variety of challenges in the age of uncertainty, and Central Asian countries and societies have their own. And one, what I would define as both as opportunity and challenge, which is completely opposite from what happens, what are the trends in Europe, it's namely demographics. Demography. So it's a both opportunity and challenge, very young population. As I learned also coming here, that Uzbekistan has a Ministry of Youth. So it also underlines the importance of placing this topic on agenda. So certainly best practices could be learned here. So youth becomes one of the driving force behind the necessity to reform, modernize, grow and also to engage and to be more open. And here I come to the second part, to the second, in a sense, resilience. It's about EU-Central Asia relations and resilience within the EU-Central Asian interaction engagement. Certainly, trajectory has been positive. Central Asian nations have become important partners for the EU. I think the mutual understanding has been developed, and it certainly is a very important key to engaging also on more technical, economic, trade, political issues. And I think it's also important that it's much more now working together instead of teaching how to live. So I think there is an equality of the partnership, or there is a balance from both sides. We've been part of the bigger project, Seneca, so with Kram here, I see. Of course, European representatives have been more optimistic. Central Asian representatives have been more cautious on EU's role. It seems that in general, still EU's relative role is going to decrease. The EU strategy for Central Asia is a positive step, but it's not a sort of game changer. I think it's more about the thinking, it's more about conceptualization, it's about framing the issues, and of course also how you think and what you put on the agenda is important. So I think it's important to put each other on the politicals, and I would also add mental maps of each other. So this absolutely is a good basis for the partnership. But it also should be reminded the EU is very diverse. The 27 countries with diverse stakeholders, interests, priorities, and certainly it's part of the game, it's part of the interaction, it's part of the engagement. I would distinguish a few issues, and again, I assume that it will be developed more extended in a debate. In the forthcoming presentations, I would certainly underline a couple of just few of them, which I believe are important. Connectivity is important. It has been underlined already here several times. And I would also say the connectivity not only of hardware, of infrastructure, be it energy, be it transportation, but also software, namely regulations, practices, also you can say informal engagement and practices. As I mentioned, young people must be addressed above all through education, and education. And also engaging and supporting civil society is important. The balance of values, human rights, and pragmatic approach must be continued. This has been always part of the EU engagement. I would also underline, I think, the importance of special representatives from Central Asia, from the European side. I think they are the faces what the EU shows to the Central Asia as well. And I think I would certainly express my, and I would assume also our appreciation for Ambassador Burian, who I think did an excellent job in engaging, in traveling, and being a really human and political face and moderator of different also difficult issues. And I think Mr. Burian has put a considerable emphasis on engaging civil society. Each special representative has its, you can say, specific focus, and I would assume also the incoming ambassador certainly would have her own emphasis in her agenda. Perhaps gender issues could be also one of the topics which could be developed. And last but not least, unfortunately, I should also say that it's not only about the future resilience and past vulnerabilities. Unfortunately, I should also mention that we are facing the risk of future vulnerabilities, and namely it's Afghanistan. Withdrawal of troops, of course, creates risks of fragmentation and destabilization. I think there is also the risk of some spillover in a neighborhood in the heart of Asia. And certainly the cooperation of a variety of stakeholders will be important. The EU, even though it has defined its importance to be a more geopolitical player, I think EU will remain more a political and economic player, not a geopolitical player. But many activities in political, economic, regulatory area will be certainly having geopolitical implications. As a one aspect, as a one endeavor, I think it's BOMKA, which I think is about the borders, but it's not only about the borders, it's about the governance, it's about interregional trade facilitation. So I think these are important measures, activities which could still be developed. So, and I would conclude, it also reminds us that Central Asia and also Central Asian EU interaction is influenced by outside developments. it also underlines importance of increasing internal resilience, internal Central Asia resilience, also in cooperation with the EU. And I think EU is very much interested in this to address vulnerabilities which actually may emanate, which can come from outside. So thank you so much. And of course, I'm looking forward to further debates.
Thank you very much for such remarkable notes and ideas. But at the same time, I have to say, dear colleagues, that all Central Asian nations are closely cooperate with Baltic nations, especially with the Parex Bank, Ritumi, and Riga terminals, sea terminals, where Uzbekistan leases certain warehouses for shipping and transiting our goods through the Baltic ports and Baltic nations. That's why last year before pandemic, visited Salzpils and Aluksne and Riga. Then we can share that the Riga and the Baltic countries and the Latvia were very close partners of Uzbeks. I mean, logistically, in logistic companies and other companies are very closely cooperate with the Latvian companies, the Latvian banks.
Absolutely. I think I appreciate your remark and also your knowledge of Latvia and Uzbekistan and Baltic Central Asian interaction. But I think if I start here, then we would wrap up conference with just a Baltic Central Asia interaction. So I think I specifically try to avoid the Latvian Uzbek. Very good cooperation. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So our next, dear colleagues, our next speaker is Professor Sanjay Kumar. Excuse me. Next speaker, Pierre Chabal from France, Professor of Political Science, Harvard University. So Professor Chabal, floor is yours.
Aziz dostlar, rahmat, taklifingiz uchun rahmat, do'stligingiz uchun tashakkur. Mana mening bir nechta notokli fikrlarim. That was my introduction. Thank you. I don't know if I belong to this high-flying conference with such prestigious people. I'm glad to welcome my cousin from Latvia. Our next conference next year is. Can you hear me well? Yes. Should be entitled From Busan in Korea to Riga in Latvia, Completing Eurasia. So we have food for thought. Let me share the screen without much further ado, if I may. And you can see on the screen my files. Maybe a little difficult to read. My topic is, as you can see on the program, Euro Central Asian relations or recognition. Relations in the Cold War, trying to compare perceptions, trying to conduct a comparative study of how each region or sub-region perceives, understands, makes sense of the other region. And since time is so short, I propose to focus in the outline on the motivations of each region vis-à-vis the other, and in the second part on the hesitations or problems or relaunches of these relations. To make things more contextualized, this is an outline from a paper already written out, about 10,000 words, so not too long, but substantial, which I will be happy to share with the organizers and publish if we decide to publish. So more specifically, in the short time that I have, looking at the motivations, I call it the more liberal perspective because it is more open to hypothesis. And in the second part, looking at the hesitations and blockages, relaunches, I focus on a more realist perspective, more concrete, mobilizing realpolitik in problems to be addressed. So simply put, I suggest that we need to begin with motivations, deep motivations as to why regions would like to cooperate together despite difficulties from history, from geopolitics, and from international trade tensions. And I see this in each region, some similitudes, that's the first point A, and some specificities, that's the point B. I call it specificities, not differences, which would be too simple. But I think these are starting points that are necessary to understand the motivations, and the motivations are similar. The motivations are very comparable in that sense. There are two categories of motivations, the apparent ones and the deep ones. The apparent ones are even perhaps as a caricature similar. If you read these points A to E for Europe and the point A to E for Central Asia, they are almost identical. To assert oneself or to establish oneself, to remain or to emerge on the international scene, to deal with institutions as a sub-region as well as a greater region, and to build a market and to build security, possibly starting with the market for Europe or starting with the security for Central Asia. These correspond to about 10 pages in my paper, but I'm sure if you read the words in red on the screen, and you will, I hope, share with me that these are simple, simplistic perhaps, but relevant categories of common motivations, similar motivations for the both for the two regions. Now, the deep motivations are a little more intricate. By deep, I referred, of course, to the underlying forces or the deep or the long-term history that social sciences is familiar with. But we have things to do with the concept of a model, the imposition of a model, or the rejection of a model. We have things as complex as symbols to take into consideration, new forms of power as well, and the avoidance or the circumventing of clashes or tensions. Each region is very much acutely aware that if tensions should, either within the region or more globally speaking, should set in, then the regional construction would be at least jeopardized and delayed and perhaps made impossible. So again, if you are familiar with European analysis, you might find some food for thought in the first points. And if you are familiar with Central Asia, although I'm an ignorant European as to Central Asia, you might remind yourselves of issues which over the past 20, 30 years have made sense for Central Asia. That's the first part. The second part is on the hesitations or problems or tensions that may exist, and I call them blockages due to misunderstandings or possible misunderstandings, and necessary or logical relaunches or restarts or new initiatives, because there are so many common interests among the two regions. Which misunderstandings might have possibly led to hesitations or blockages in the past? Well, simply, I think that from the point of view of some Europeans, I'm not talking about the experts, some of the Europeans, there are ambiguities and misunderstandings regarding Central Asia. How much is Central Asia a region or China's westward initiative? How much is Central Asia and the Shanghai Cooperation Energy Club, or that sort of thing, possibly a potential tension vis-a-vis energy? How much is Islam and culture, or what, wrongly speaking, people call civilization, an issue for the region? Not to me, but for some people. And confusing or difficulty to make out the differences between Central Asia and the rest of Asia. This will make our Asian friends smile, but you must understand that from the point of view of the West and from the point of view of Europe, the word Asia has meant very, very different things from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And so the word is the same, but the meaning of the word is not the same. From the point of view of Central Asia, I think, as an ignorant visitor to your region, there are ambiguities in the perceptions of Europe. What is Europe? Is it a NATO instrument? Is it a global OSCE value imposer? Is it still mainly a model exporter, the famous European Community model exporter? Or is it involved with classic geopolitical will to dominate? These are ambiguities. Of course, simplistically speaking, these are about 20 words in red on the screen, but they correspond to discussions, issues, publications that I have read or been involved in as to the need to clarify what we mean by Europe when we are in Central Asia, and what we mean by Central Asia when we are in Europe. Having said that, there are deep interests, common interests that will, I suppose, this is my hypothesis, be able to overcome tensions and ambiguities. As far as Europe is concerned, there is a long-term tilting of European interests to the east. A movement to the east, of course, I refer here to Fernand Braudel's long history and the moves of the center of the world economy. But this movement is a long-term one. Identity value issues and identity clarification are also long-term issues and very complex problems that go beyond diplomacy and beyond trade and logistics. To substantiate the foreign policy of the European Union, the EU has a foreign policy on the paper. What it contains, what the substance of it is, needs to be clarified. And indeed, the 2017 second EU strategy for Central Asia is a relevant step in that direction. Now, what do we mean by geopolitical stance for Europe? I'm surprised often to hear European officials say something like the EU has no geopolitical intention in Central Asia, which either means a very subtle form of diplomacy or which means nothing, because everything to some extent for thousands of years has been geopolitical in many, many ways. So there are interests on the part of Europe for Central Asia, and I suggest to call them distinct things. And reciprocally, from the point of view of Central Asia, there are major deep interests in the European neighborhood. Let's call it neighborhood, not model or details. This is for Central Asia, it means to balance out relations with all regions of the world, including Europe, not exclusively, but also with Europe, and not just with other major regions in the world. To go beyond the issue of identity as a post-Soviet. And this is something which I hope people will agree with, that in regions there is a phase, a moment when identity is post something. I suppose the European identity was post-war to some extent for many, many years. Now it is purely European. And the post-Soviet identity of Central Asia is, of course, an outdated concept today, but we need to understand how it's outdated and what it is replaced by. And an interest for the social policies, social, medical, social security systems of the European states, and an interest for the economic single market construction of the European construction. I'm over time, grossly over time. I'm very sorry, but it's impossible to talk about these things without ambitioning to be complete. It's 11 minutes. I stop immediately. Thank you for your attention. And as I said, this is more of a research program than a paper presentation.
Professor Shabal, thank you very much for such a wide picture and description of the elements of the Central Asian development and their politics. Thank you very much for that. And the next speaker is our longtime partner, Professor Sanjay Kumar Pandey, Professor of Jawaharlal Nehru University. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I came for the connectivity conference, and Akram asked me to speak in this as well, which is very fortunate because there are issues which are common for both the connectivity conference as well as this dialogue, EU Central Asia dialogue. Professor Shabal's intervention was very comprehensive. He almost did not leave out anything. I would like to just mention that some of the things that he said about EU Central Asia, especially the pointed way in which he told about the concerns or apprehensions of EU vis-a-vis Central Asia and Central Asian apprehensions vis-a-vis Europe. The same can be said, maybe to a lesser degree, about India and EU. Some of the stereotypes about India or Asian countries in EU which he talked about in case of Central Asia, can be said about India as well. And some of the concerns, rather irritation, that many Indians feel about EU's posture or position on democracy and human rights, whereas we in India, on our path to more democracy, of course, it's always a zigzag. The march towards democracy is dialectical. It's never straight. You have lean periods. And it was there in Europe. It is there in India. I'm sure it is there in Central Asia as well. But overall, I'm confident the march is towards greater democracy and more human rights. But that is not my concern. I think but there are many positives. He did talk about, Professor Shabal talked about some of the positives. I would like to emphasize those positives. He very pointedly and bluntly said that it is not perhaps very appropriate to say that Europe doesn't have geopolitical interest in Central Asia. This is the stereotype, the positive stereotype about Europe, that EU talks about political relations, economic relations, soft power, but not really geopolitics. It does not have a great power ambition in Asia, in Central Asia, in South Asia. Listening to Professor Shabal, one can say that perhaps that is not very correct. But nevertheless, I would still say this is largely true. When we see other players, when we see US, Russia, China, with their geopolitical, we would like to see it that way, ambitions in Central Asia or the larger region, EU is seen as not proactive on that front. There is a similar perception about India. The most common refrain in Central Asia about India is that I came across is that India is a reluctant player. India doesn't play according to its power or what it can. So a reluctant player. I suppose in certain ways this is good. This at least does not create any concerns in Central Asia. So there is a positive perception, I would still like to believe, about Europe in Central Asia, about Europe in India as well, and about India in Central Asia. That creates a common ground for the two entities to come together to cooperate in certain sectors. Now, what are these common interests that EU and India have in Central Asia? Well, security of borders and all those things are givens. EU, India, for that matter, many other countries also would not like the present political borders and arrangements in Central Asia to be disturbed. So political and social stability in Central Asia, which I would say, despite all apprehensions in rest of the world, most of the Central Asian countries, more particularly Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, have maintained very well. For 30 years, the political and social stability and cohesion has been remarkable, I would say. There are problems underneath, but overall the picture is positive. So both EU and India would like to see Central Asia politically stable, socially cohesive, tolerant. We are largely secular societies with problems here and there. But what are the concrete concerns that we have? Now, the buzzword today is connectivity. Tomorrow, there is a big high-level conference on connectivity, and connectivity in its most comprehensive meaning and sense. And we know the Chinese, with their very ambitious, and ambitious is not, doesn't have a pejorative connotation. It can be very positive. So let's take it in a positive sense. The Chinese have their OBOR, BRI, whatnot, with their massive resources and very concrete plans which are going ahead. Some problems, disruptions due to COVID notwithstanding. The Russians have Eurasian Economic Union. Unfortunately, the American initiative, the New Silk Route, the Central Asia, South Asia with Afghanistan as the focal point, that did not take off. I believe that both EU and India would have very much been comfortable with that project, the American initiative, even if US is not very keen. We would still like to explore alternative plans for connectivity. And in this connection, the Indian plan, which is a very old one, but as I very old one, and Akram very rightly laughed at it. It is more than 20 years old. It was first mooted in September 2000 in St. Petersburg. And when India, Russia, Iran decided to come together, you know the story, the sanctions against Iran, because of which for a decade and a half, it could not really take off, despite some development. In the last 5 years, it has taken off. And the international north-south corridor is already operational. And there is trade through this route. Even in Uzbekistan, some of the Indian exports to Uzbekistan and Uzbekistan's exports to India are going via Bandar Abbas, which was the initial port, the most critical in Iran of this connectivity. In recent times, recent years, India has started a very more ambitious Chabahar project, which is going on, despite, again, some hitches, also because of India's own reluctance or slow-moving bureaucracy, but it has taken off again. Much work has been done. Some more needs to be done. I believe if India gets, somehow these projects have not really been shining examples the way the Chinese projects are. Now, they can take off, really take off, if EU decides to pitch in, both in terms of resources and otherwise. For example, the initial objective of INSTC was to facilitate India's trade with Eurasian region, including Northern Europe, and one can even say the rest of Europe. Now, if somehow EU gets interested, if it's trade with this part of the world and also with Southeast Asia can be routed through this INSTC, that will give a big boost. I know the problems involved because Russia is there. And because of EU sanctions against Russia in the aftermath of Ukraine crisis, I know the problems. But I would rather propose, it's very important to bring in Russia and to bring in Iran. Again, on Iran, our viewpoints converge. I'm not saying they are same. I'm not saying even they are similar, but converge in the sense we would not like Iran to be totally left out. Europe and India, for that matter, do not want Russia to be totally sidelined. That doesn't suit geopolitics also, apart from other concerns and interests. So it's very important to both engage with Iran and with Russia and to somehow help the IRSTC project, International North-South Project, Corridor Project, and the Chabahar project to take off. And in my limited understanding, I believe that it will be in the interest of Europe, as I see it. So I believe they can cooperate. I'll just make one more point before I end. And it has been made earlier, and it will be made, I'm very sure, that is Afghanistan. Now, again, our concerns vis-a-vis, in fact, the concerns of Europe, Central Asia, and India, again, converge on Afghanistan. we want to see a stable Afghanistan, but we really don't know what is in store for us. Whosoever gains the upper hand, we will see in next few months. We already have some indicators. I don't want to mention names of groups and organizations which are seen as gaining ground in Afghanistan. I know India, after more than 20-25 years of reluctance and hesitation, has opened channels of communication with these groups. We can't avoid them. If they are going to be there, and the Americans are, of course, talking to them, the Afghan government is talking to them, the Russians are talking to them, the Chinese are talking to them, now even Indians through different channels are engaging with them. But stability of Afghanistan, India has more than $3 billion projects and investments in Afghanistan. We want security of that. I'm very sure majority of the Afghans want India to remain in Afghanistan. I have a feeling that the group, which I haven't named, even they would want India to be in Afghanistan. I would speak in a very cynical way. I don't think any other country is willing to dump $3 billion and still remain engaged in Afghanistan. And Indians do not have a very sharp business sense, the government at least. Individual companies might be having. Even if these investments are not paying us back, we would still want to remain committed in Afghanistan. And I am very sure the groups which are gaining ground in Afghanistan would like India to remain there.
Yeah, well, we can continue this.
Yes,
thank you.
So
Thank you.
this again brings us together, and Central Asia with borders with Afghanistan, in Terabez, Mazar-e-Sharif is there, Farkhor is there. We can create facilities there together. Thank you very much. Sorry, thank you for more time.
Thank you very much, Professor Pandey. So the interest of India and India as a nation and its interest is inseparable from the interests of Central Asian nations and Afghanistan, definitely.
True, very true.
Hindustan Zindabad.
Hindustan Zindabad.
Thank you. So so the next speaker is Jan Alex from France, General Delegate of the Foundation of Cefacil.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Hakan said to me, we are really short of time, so you have 5 minutes. So I would do that in 5 minutes, I hope so. Thank you very much, first, Gulnosa and Hakan for inviting me. I am the last one, I guess, the new kid on the block, because I got a few minutes away from the meeting. So just sharing, I hope to not be out of the picture or really aside of the scope of the conference today, because I am an expert of supply chain and logistics. And when we talk about connectivity, as you said previously, we do not talk only about infrastructures. We talk about software, we talk about skills, we talk about capacity building, we talk about confidence between stakeholders. And I would just share with you just a couple of words, because 5 minutes is really short, about one situation you are maybe not really aware of, because you are maybe far away from that problem of resilience and connectivity around the world. It's the supply chain today is in crisis. It's totally in crisis because you know that 90% of the total trade is totally reliant on shipping companies and containerization. And actually, we are facing an amazing situation, absolutely an amazing. You have to pay $50,000 for exporting a 40-feet container from Shanghai to Rotterdam. You have to pay $20,000 for connecting Shanghai to New York City.
Almost twice more than before.
No, 7 times.
7 times.
7 times. It's absolutely ridiculous. And because of that, we are facing a problem of connectivity. It's your daily life, which is in danger, I would say, because you would have to pay more for less. in terms of quality, in terms of reliability, in terms of efficiency. And what I would like to share with you today is that point. I would let the slide for sharing, of course. We are in a global world of connectivity. But by saying that, what is interesting is that the landlocked situation of Central Asia might be tomorrow an opportunity. Might be an opportunity because from the European sovereignty, we are too much dependent on China. Actually, we are facing some critical issues for just importing masks, especially in France. It has been a really, really tricky political issue for my president because we were not just able to provide some masks to the French citizens, because we were not able to just produce masks in France.
In such volume,
In such volume, but even at the small scale, we were not able to have the industrial production for that. And I'm talking about a mask. I'm not talking about
vaccination or something.
Exactly, sir. Exactly, sir. So I do believe that, and I would just keep my time under control, Akram, I promise. I do believe that the next resilience into the supply chain is to better connect Europe with Central Asia. In a nearshoring strategy, in a common nearshoring strategy, how can we feed together by connecting better our opportunities of development, our opportunities, and I would say that not from a public perspective, but from a private perspective. Why I'm telling you that today? It's because 4 of the 5 biggest shipping line companies of the world are European. And they are under the control of European families, private business. And they are still looking for opportunities of growth, not only on shipping side, but as well on the inland side. And believe me, when I'm talking with CMA CGM, they are full of cash to invest, not in China, not in countries so far away from Europe, but they are looking around Europe. And when I'm talking about around Europe, it's of course Morocco, it's of course Egypt, it's of course Turkey. Big countries, big population. You talk about demography first. Obviously, we need to have some skilled, educated people, cheap, I'm sorry to say that, affordable labor forces, and energy. And we don't have any problem of energy in Central Asia, actually. So I do believe, and I would conclude by that, by saying that building a common value chain strategy to support the made in Central Asia product means the resiliency of the next generation of the value chain network of the world. And I do believe, and I hope, I commit myself last year by saying from landlocked constraint to land-linked opportunity, that it starts by connecting Central Asia first. So being stronger together than weaker alone. So connectivity for me means that building a common market at the Central Asia level, and I'm talking about logistics, supply chain, and value chain, not about politics. I'm sorry about that, because I'm not an expert of that. But I would say that made in Central Asia value chain strategy is really, really a hot topic for the private companies of Europe, both from the shipping line perspective as well as from the third-party logistics provider perspective. And I would remind you that the fourth biggest for 3PL, I don't know if you understand that, third-party logistics services companies are from Europe as well.
Definitely.
Germany and Switzerland. So I would just conclude by that, by saying that from my perspective, and I'm definitely not an expert of that topic, when you invited me, resilience and connectivity, in my mind, as a logistician, means that we have to get closer together through investment into the infrastructures, but through the sharing knowledge, sharing a vision of how geography does not mean anything now. We just have to build some reliable, efficient, and confident networks together. This is my, I guess I have done in 5 minutes. Maybe I will be the only one to do that. But I'm proud of that. You know, it's value chain management. You deliver on time. After that, you have to pay for the extra. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
So as I was told that in that context, I agree with you, but nevertheless, geography is not so important now, as you mentioned it, in international politics. And I was told the very big, giant French business like Société Générale, Banque Nationale de Paris, or the Louis Dreyfus companies are opening an office in Tashkent. That's why it's going to say that once again, the Uzbekistan as a Central Asian nation and the French companies, French giants in EU is going to connect to each other.
You're right.
That's again, it confirms that the ideas you mentioned.
They were there with 40 different French companies 2 months ago for a meeting, private Tashkent Uzbekistan company for building together PPP.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. So our next speaker is Timur Sharan from Afghanistan, founder and executive director of Afghanistan Policy Lab.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you so much for this sober analysis account of the value chain system. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. It was wonderful to be here and discuss connectivity, in whatever form that is. Now, maybe given that this is a connectivity conference, maybe I start like a good Afghan with a poetry of a Pakistani poet, actually, a sub-Indian continent poet, Iqbal Lahori, a grand master poet. And I said in Farsi, and then I move on to the translation very quickly. Asya yak paykare abud gul ast, millat Afghan daran paykar dil ast, az fasad ou fasad Asya, gushad ou gushad Asya. Asia is a body of water and clay, of which the Afghan nation forms the heart. The whole of Asia is corrupt if the heart is corrupt. Its decline is the decline of Asia, and its rise is the rise of Asia. Well said. Now, Central Asia does present an excellent opportunity, there is no doubt. And Afghanistan as the roundabout of connectivity, and that's how we like to see ourselves, present an excellent opportunity. Now, US is departing, which is a wonderful thing because the region used to see us through the NATO and American lens. Russia used to see us, the Iranians used to see us through the NATO lens. So maybe the military might of the US departure is good for Afghanistan and the region, and it presents a fantastic opportunity to shift from geosecurity to geoeconomics. Now, it also, but to achieve this connectivity in Central Asia, South Asia, we'll have a serious challenge. And that is that in light of the current situation in the country and the US sudden military withdrawal, those gains and aspirations are at risk, are at serious risk. Projects such as $3 billion that my good colleague from India mentioned is at serious risk. Similarly, other investment that European countries, some Central Asian countries have made in Afghanistan in light of connectivity objective is at risk. Central Asia's aspiration as a hub of economic growth is at serious risk. Now, I'm going to keep it very short by highlighting a number of points that ought to be done in the immediate short term to avoid a scenario in which we enter a complete collapse of the state and takeover of the group that my colleague wasn't mentioning his name, the Taliban, and the disastrous spillover effect in Central Asian countries. Now, first, we ought to see neighboring countries stop hedging their bets by supporting elements within the Afghan side, and I mean the both opposition and the Republic side, that would exacerbate the situation on the ground. What we are seeing right now, and I can be very frank here and make a reference to Pakistan and Pakistan's important role here in Afghanistan, that they seem to be out of control. They seem to have lost control of their client in Afghanistan, and that is absolutely shocking, and that is absolutely disastrous for Pakistan in the medium to long-term prospect. Events on the ground seems to be have completely taken out of control of Pakistan. But more importantly, the third one, events on the ground is dictating the political and regional diplomatic efforts, and also securitization, further securitization of the country. And I think that needs to be everyone, including Iran, Russia, Pakistan, India as well, needs to stop and think through. Because if you're hedging your bets and you're exaggerating the situation on the ground. And the biggest loser here would be India, the Taliban political leadership sitting in Doha comfortably, and more importantly, the Afghan people and the Central Asian countries. Now, that is my message. There are spillover effects of Taliban taking over Afghanistan is very serious. Anyone who thinks Taliban have changed, including the Uzbek colleagues who think that they have engaged enough with the Taliban, they might be in for a surprise. The level of fundamentalism, extremism is higher than 1992. The level
completely different.
Completely different. And I think that would be naive on the part of Russians and Central Asians, including Iran, to think that Taliban have changed and there will be a different situation and economic opportunities could continue. Especially if the military leadership takes over from the political leadership. And that is what we're increasingly seeing on the ground. What can EU do? And let me finish here. Recently, I co-authored 9 policy briefs for Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. And there are some very comprehensive suggestions and recommendations there, but I rely on a few here. The EU, now that the NATO has withdrawn from Afghanistan or is in the process of withdrawing, could support a regional framework for the Afghan peace. And that we have to take it seriously. There is a space the US have left for regional countries to come together and design and develop a regional framework and deliver an Afghan peace. That is good for the interests of all these countries. We ought to see a more active role for the UN, and we cannot afford a UN that is passive, a UN that is dismissive of the current situation. Thirdly, EU can leverage its declining economic, political, political, economic, and diplomatic leverage with India, Iran, Russia, and others to pursue and engage some of these countries to stop hedging their bets in Afghanistan. EU enjoys a very good bilateral relations with Central Asia. That presents an excellent opportunity. Finally, we do not want to see a reluctant India, as my good colleague said, a reluctant player. And to be honest, the next decade will be the Chinese decade, whether you like it or not. And that presents a key question for my Indian colleagues. I mean, it's wonderful that you have made $3 billion investment in Chabahar, South, North, but all of them are dead from where I stand. What needs to be done, China has made $62 billion investment in Pakistan. They have signed a strategic agreement, economic and political agreement with Iran over $200 to $300 billion, which is incredibly massive. And then they have, I hear from my colleagues that they have invested around $30 billion in Central Asian countries. So this is going to be the Chinese decade, and it is going to be the Chinese who will be playing the dominant role in Central Asia and Afghanistan and Pakistan and South Asia. And I think that presents a key question to my Indian colleagues and to my European colleagues who think that they do not have a geopolitical interest in Central Asia. I think they do, and I think that's raises an important question for the US and European colleagues, where they're heading in the next decade in terms of their competition for Central Asia, Afghanistan, and South Asia. Thank you very much.
بسیار تشکر یا برادر عزیز و محترم for such great advice not to look to Afghanistan with rose glasses, and really we should accept everything you told very seriously. So dear colleagues, our next speaker is Akram Umarov from the University of World Economics and Diplomacy. He is a senior research fellow at our university, and I consider him as one of the prominent experts of the issues of Central Asian security and development, and respect him very much in that context. Thank you. Akramjan, floor. Yes, definitely. Akramjan, floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And again, considering we have very limited time, I'll try to be very pointed and just highlight several general ideas of my understanding of the current state of EU-Central Asia cooperation. First of all, I would like to emphasize that definitely EU has devoted considerable attention and resources to its relations with Central Asia. And if you compare with many other non-regional or most of external actors, EU's approach is very organized. It can be, you can differentiate EU with a very organized approach involving the production of concrete strategies, reviews of the strategies. So you possibly cannot find such approach, let's say, in Russian region to Central Asia or Chinese. So it's mostly very relevant to EU to promote such strategies and have again this very organized understanding of the region. And of course, this allowed EU to define its relations with Central Asia on the basis of its interests in the region itself, but not as an appendix to something else. So not linking Central Asia only to Russia or China or Afghanistan, or trying to look on Central Asia as a separate independent region which needs kind of attention from the European Union. Second thing which I would like to underline, the current regional approach of the EU to Central Asia, I think should avoid being mired in this Soviet era definition of the region. So we need to have a broader understanding and definition of Central Asia, not this purely 5 regional countries from the Soviet period, but we are now speaking more and more about involvement of Afghanistan as part of this, let's say, greater Central Asia. But many things, of course, depend on the further development of situation in this part of the world. Third thing which I would like to mention, in principle, the Central Asian states are inherently positively predisposed, especially toward non-regional powers presence in Central Asia. We, of course, mainly located between 2 major kind of regional powers, Russia and China. But at the same time, we are kind of promoting and supporting the more involvement, the comprehensive involvement of non-regional powers like European Union, like United States, or middle-level powers like Japan, South Korea. So we are very interested to promote this balanced multi-vector approach in our foreign policies. Fourth thesis that EU, I think, still can do much for regional cooperation in Central Asia, security, and the promotion of the Euro-Asian connectivity. Afghanistan and Central Asia are now in dire need of effective and positive outcomes from the ongoing discussions, and we have mentioned this issue while we had a meetings with Timur on the platform of Stiftung, that we have talked so much on Central Asia, on Afghanistan, on connectivity, but it's time to do something on the ground. Yeah, with all these platforms, all these negotiation groups, contact groups, and etc., they would stay useless if we will not start doing specific projects, concrete outputs on the ground, especially in Afghanistan. So this can be some small scale. No, I'm not talking only about such great projects like the railway from Uzbekistan to Pakistan, but more on a local community level projects which can be life-changing, which can have a life-changing effect for these local communities. Finally, the most valuable contribution Europe can make to Central Asia is still, I think, probably lies in the sphere of education. And the EU has a very advanced opportunity in promoting this area. And despite this large presence of China and Russia, if you ask, let's say, alumnus of this university, where would you like to study after completion of bachelor degree?
European Union.
EU, China, or Russia, they would probably choose the European Union. So this is a comparative advantage of European Union. I think Europe should put more emphasis on this area and develop maybe more specific region-oriented projects for Central Asia, because in a global level, maybe we can be still less competitive in applying for different scholarships, for involving more additional funding, but considering the high interest and attention for European studies here in the region, I think it's important to develop some specific region-oriented programs. Thanks a lot, and I think we can continue our discussions in the next panel.
Kamjan, many thanks for your views. I appreciate it very much. And dear colleagues, I would like to suggest, if you don't mind, before to move to a discussion part, to have a group photo, if you don't mind. Then
Yes.
we could continue our discussion.
Family.
Q&A.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's a sad suggestion, such a cruel suggestion. I cannot be with you.
Or that после добавить что-то.
Йодан Турцик Боланда, да, он будет в кадре.
Давайте.
Да.
Let's. Там стол стоит.
Ничего страшного. Одинаково.
Там лучше, да?
Да.
Давайте.
Here you will be on the photo. We will stand there. Попроси включить видео. У нас Антонио на связи, он тоже будет фото.
The participants who are online, they can also turn on their videos to be in our photo, group photo, if they want.
Антонио, please. А вот все.
Good. Now we see people with cameras. That's better.
Сейчас, пока настроимся.
Yakın ol Azize.
Ben ortadım.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. From the heart, from the soul.
So Q&A? Q&A? Oh, we will continue second panel. Okay. Okay.
Is there no time for questions?
But if
Jan, can you give us the interview, please? Please, just a couple of minutes. Yes? So will we continue?
Yeah, please.
First speech.
can we ask everyone to
Yes, we can continue and we will give the floor to a professor of our university.
I'm sorry.
yeah.
We'll
Okay,
continue, yes.
Good day, dear friends, dear colleagues. It is indeed a privilege to be in this very interesting seminar. My name is Mirza Hidrahimov. I am professor in UED. Also, I'm working in the Contemporary History Center in Academy of Science in Tashkent. I would like to thank Professor Lubir Hasanov and all speakers in the first panel. I think it was extremely interesting presentation. I enjoyed it very much. Of course, we have a lot of question or comments, but maybe because the limitation of the time, we will do general discussion maybe in the end of our whole presentation, if Professor Shabal don't mind.
Well, I'm French, but I can also be polite. I have a meeting at 10 o'clock French time with another group. So, but I can delay that a little bit. What time would the discussion be? Tashkent time?
I do hope we will finish on time. I promise you we will finish on time.
Which means before 1 o'clock your time.
Yes, I do.
It will be difficult to.
You know, moderator should to be after tarrying. There is no other option.
Okay, so 1 p.m. your time is 10 a.m. my time. That's fine. Okay, so 1 p.m. your time. That's fine. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We have a second panel on EU Central Asia in the context of sustainable development goals. Everyone knows about the Asian Silk Road, yeah, and based on the previous speaker's presentation, it's came to my mind that the Silk Road was managed by the Sogdians, very small people nowadays, Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, who was the master of the whole system of providing goods. And we have a French colleague who from a logistic company. So this small group of people made inter-regional, very wide international connectivity. I think this is unique phenomena. And one of the reasons is because they studied the children from 3 years for several foreign languages. And when the Chinese ambassador was here in the early Middle Ages century, he was very impressed to see how small Sogdian boys and girls can speak in several languages. So they created basis for, in perspective, creating, let's say, very not only communication, but also the system, which is have a lot of elements. And I fully agree that there is many aspects which we can learn. I'm sure the education and academic partnership will be priority on Central Asia and EU discussion. It is with great privilege I would like to give the floor the professor at the Center of EU Studies in Ghent University, Professor Fabian Bosiet. Please, floor is yours. I would like to remind all speakers you have only 5 minutes to speak. I'm very, very sorry.
That's very understandable. Okay, good morning. Hello from Belgium, from Ghent, where unfortunately, although it's summer, you will not think, you think it's autumn instead of summer. It's been a bit sad here. So actually, I wish I was there in person in Tashkent, because I assume the weather there is much better than it is here. Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this very timely and important conference on EU Central Asia relations. So in my brief presentation, I will talk both from the experience of my own academic research, as well as from my involvement in the EU's policy engagement with Central Asia. Now, in particular here, I would like to make the argument that the European Union should really seize the COVID-19 pandemic recovery as an opportunity to prioritize people-focused recovery in Central Asia. Because if anything, the pandemic has really revealed the pressing need to increase investments in socio-economic infrastructure and policies, not least with respect to healthcare and social safety nets. Across Central Asia, but actually worldwide, those who have been hardest hit by the COVID-19 crisis are the most vulnerable people in society, including the elderly and households with low incomes. By now, unfortunately, we all know that similar crises, similar pandemics are likely to emerge in the future. And therefore, it's really absolutely crucial that we strengthen societal resilience to cope with the shocks that such crises create. And so I argue that this can be done by prioritizing people-focused recovery and thereby laying the ground for stronger societal resilience. And central to this approach is a focus on well-being and on inclusiveness, rather than just simply continuing prioritizing economic growth and job creation. Of course, economic growth and job creation remain essential, but this by itself is just not sufficient. Now, what this current crisis has shown is that if we return to business as usual, this would not translate into a sustainable long-term recovery, which also enhances well-being and reduces inequality. So instead, we really need to seize the COVID-19 recovery as an opportunity to push forward an innovative, people-focused agenda, which goes beyond economic growth and job creation by prioritizing other aspects that contribute to inclusion and well-being, such as access to education, job quality, housing, and access to healthcare. Now, as a scholar specializing in EU engagement with Central Asia, I argue that international donors like the EU should really seize the post-COVID-19 recovery as an opportunity to promote such a people-focused recovery in Central Asia. By putting a focus on inclusion and well-being more centrally in its engagement with Central Asia, the European Union should support the ability of the local societal actors to self-organize and to draw on their local strengths and their own knowledge of the available resources and infrastructure in order to mitigate or adapt to the COVID-19 crisis and any future similar crises. Central Asia really stands out as a region where such a people-focused approach could bear fruit. The COVID-19 pandemic has revealed the crucial role that civil society and especially community-based initiatives in Central Asian countries played in offering life-saving assistance where governments fell short. In fact, much more than in Western societies, societies in Central Asia are collective in nature rather than individualistic. So this also implies that solidarity among the members of the community is much more embedded in the local practices and the local customs than in Western societies. Now, especially in countries like Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, state capacity is not always strong enough to cope with a crisis of such magnitude. And so vital public services like healthcare and social protection are actually deficient. And it's really in such context that societal resilience is even more important in order to stand up to a major crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I argue that resilience strategies involving the sharing of responsibilities among individuals and among communities will really increase the ability of the Central Asian countries to stand up to such crises in the future. The COVID-19 crisis has really put this assertion to the test, and the crisis has revealed that civil society and community-based initiatives have been instrumental in addressing direct implications of the pandemic. I could give several examples, but I'm not going to do that because we're under time constraints. And of course, the participants who are based in Uzbekistan or in other Central Asian countries are very well aware of the types of examples that are there. But to sum up, I think given that several of the Central Asian societies have a strong tradition of homegrown solidarity movements and locally embedded forms of self-governance, the European Union should really seize the post-COVID-19 recovery as an opportunity to help boost societal resilience in Central Asia. And it can do so by supporting the ability of local societal actors to self-organize and to draw on their local strengths and their own knowledge of the available resources and infrastructure. I end my talk here, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Fabiana. Let me give the floor Dr. Faridun Sattarov. He is the head of Political Science Department at the University of World Economy and Diplomacy. Please, Faridun.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
I hope you will pardon the fact that I cannot turn on my camera, as I have been feeling very unwell these couple of days, and I hope you'll pardon that fact. My input is going to be very brief. Well, I'll try to be as brief as possible. As you may know, I'm the head of the Political Science Department at the University of World Economy and Diplomacy. My research concerns the politics and ethics of technology. And as we are talking about deepening cooperation between Central Asia and European Union, I would like to see greater cooperation in terms of science and technology. Specifically, in recent years, there's been a growing awareness of ethical issues resulting from the globalization of science and technology. And I can give you one specific example. It's what we call ethics dumping. Ethics dumping describes a situation in which a research organization, a company or a corporation deliberately moves its laboratory experiments or clinical trials to a country that does not have ethical or legal standards for regulating or governing such research activities. In this way, the research organization or company in question can get away with dubious and questionable moral practices simply by moving them from one country to another. But you may ask, how is this relevant to our discussion? The answer partly rests in the fact that Uzbekistan is currently undertaking major steps to liberalize the economy, to improve the investment climate, and to open up domestic markets to foreign businesses and investors. In particular, the process of attracting foreign direct investment in the country will inevitably result in the establishment of various joint ventures, acquisitions, and so-called greenfield enterprises, which in turn will lead to the intensification of research and development activities with foreign partners. However, as many would agree, an increase in science and research and technology development with foreign partners can have its own ethical and moral perils. Hence, to prepare the country and society to avoid the negative effects and consequences of the scientific and technological globalization, it is necessary, I think, to have an ethics framework for assessing research and technological innovation. In this particular regard, Central Asia, especially Uzbekistan, can and should cooperate with European partners, as Europe has been at the forefront of creating and developing frameworks for ethical design and responsible innovation. We can mention a few, such as responsible research and innovation, and there are a few other frameworks they're being developed as we speak. My other concern is about artificial intelligence, the shorthand AI, and related technologies based on machine learning algorithms. We have seen a lot of progress in this area. They're expected to have a huge societal, political, and ethical impact. My particular worry is that as we open up our domestic markets, we may become flooded with AI technology of various sorts, cheap AI, for example, coming from China and other countries. So again, we need ethical and legal frameworks to stem the negative impact of such technological innovations, and again, cooperation with European partners in this area may be beneficial to us all. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Faridun, for your very interesting presentation. I would like to give the floor Professor of History and Society, Antonio Alonso Marcos, from São Paulo University, Spain. Please, floor is yours.
So good morning. Thanks for the invitation. I would like to thank to the Professor Ismailova for this opportunity to share with you a little part of my experience of cooperation between European Union and Central Asia. I would like to share my screen, my presentation. So I try to do it. As you can see, it's not very big, but it's 33 slides. But of course, I'm not going to stop in all of them. First of all, I would like to focus here in the European Union as a factor for integration process in Central Asia. And when we are talking about, I mean, at the European Union in Brussels, when we are talking about Central Asia, we are talking about these 5 countries, but also we have to take into account they have into account Afghanistan. The integration, when they are talking about regional integration, of course, they are talking about the improvement of how can I say of infrastructures here in Central Asia in these 5 countries, but also they have into account the situation in Afghanistan. Let me show you. I'm not going to explain all of the purposes and instruments of the European Union that they are using in that region in Central Asia, and also you know very well the main goals. The support the political process, the economic reforms, and other aspects like tourism, education, and COVID-19. But let me show you directly the conclusions. Here, I helped to prepare this book, La Puerta de Clavijo. Unfortunately, it's only in Spanish. But if you click here in the presentation, I will send you later the presentation. You can see the link for the PDF, and they are preparing the Russian version. So in some months, I think before the end of 2021, I can send you the copy or the link for the PDF in Russian. So here you have my conclusions. Before explaining something, there has been a coherence in the European policy towards the region since the very beginning of the independence, so 30 years ago. Since the beginning of the independence, the European Union helped Central Asia politically and economically. Another factor of integration, they are education and person-to-person, people-to-people contacts. And they prepare a strategy for Central Asia in 2007, and one other, they review and they prepare a new one in 2019. But as I told you, there is a coherence between the beginning, the strategy of 2007, and this new strategy 2019. And you have here the main goals: political process, support the political process in terms of security, democracy, elections, human rights, and so on. And the support in the economic reforms of these 5 Central Asian countries, the policy of privatization, open market, the access to World Trade Organization, and so on. And I would like to underline some words of Peter Burian, who is the former European Union Special Representative for Central Asia. The European Union cooperation is non-exclusive, and this is the main point of my presentation. And of course, the last conclusion is that we are not ready, we are not prepared for the 2 main current challenges for the region, which are COVID-19 and of course the deteriorated situation in Afghanistan. So we are not ready for that because we have the European Union developed their strategies thinking about a horizon without the Taliban in the government, but okay. So we have to keep in mind these two points, or 2 main events: the International Conference Central Asian Connectivity that it was in Tashkent in 2019, and also in 2019 the signature of this, the signing of this this event of the signing of the strategy, the new strategy in Bishkek, also in July 2019. This is one of the moments of the International Conference, Central Asian Connectivity, Challenges and New Opportunities. And during the conference, Peter Burian, the former EU Special Representative, he insisted on these ideas. We wanted to strengthen the resilience of the region. So you have to solve your problems by yourselves, but we want to support you. And also keep in mind this, he was talking about Afghanistan in 2019. We have to take into account the situation in Afghanistan, because the security in Afghanistan means also the security in neighboring Afghanistan, which means, of course, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. Because if we take care of the situation here, we are, because that has consequences for our own security and stability. It means that the situation in Afghanistan is also important for the European security and stability. And here you have, of course, one of the sentences of this joint communique of the meeting, the ministerial meeting. We are working in a strong mutual interest between the two regions: peace, security, human rights, democracy, sustainable development. You can see here that they are not talking about COVID-19 because it was before the outbreak, and also they are not talking about Afghanistan because they thought the peace talks in Doha and some other places, they were to be successful. Also, again, the joint communique here, here we have the COVID-19, but in any case, they are focusing border management, trade facilitation, people-to-people contacts, and water management. And here you have the same priorities: the support the development of democratic representative institutions, reduce the chances of conflict, continue promoting the economic reform, financial security, and so on. They are the same priorities than in 2019. Here you have the instruments, the main instruments we are using, or the European Union is using there in that region. This is program, Tempus, Erasmus Mundus, Innocate, BOMCA, which is in the 10th phase, the environment with Eureka and other programs, and transport with Traseca, which is not a partner, but is the competitive project of the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. Again, the guiding principles of the strategy in 2007 are the same than the other one in 2019. I would like to add that in the EU global strategy is also coherent or cohesive with this. I'm going to finish. So I would like to underline these words of Peter Burian. And this joint communication aims to forge a stronger, modern, and non-exclusive partnership. And non-exclusive partnership means that if you are partner of the European Union, that is compatible, perfectly compatible with the partnership with Russia and other actors like China and so on. So, okay, just to finish, I would like to remind that they have changed the EU Special Representative for Central Asia. This is the new Terry Hakala, and okay, and okay, I'm finishing. This is just to remind the I don't know how to remind the conclusions, but the last one I think is the most important. We are not prepared. We are not ready for the two main current challenges for the region. So thanks for your attention. And if you have any question, please, also you have here my email address, and that's all. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Antonio. I would like to give the floor Dr. Gauhar Sultanova. She's a professor in UET, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, the organizers and participants of this conference. So the topic of my presentation is opportunities for the development of Uzbekistan's export to the EU market in the framework of GSP+. As you know, on April 10, the special system of preferences of the European Union for good governance and sustainable development came into force for Uzbekistan, where the Republic was admitted as a beneficiary country under general scheme of preferences. The system of preferences will allow to export to the EU 6,200 types of goods on free of duty basis. Prior to the provision of GSP+, Uzbekistan, as a low middle income country, used the GSP regime, which allowed 3,000 types of wood to be exported to the EU without custom duties and 3,200 types at reduced rates. The level of GSP preference used by Uzbekistan amounted 87% in 2019. The total value of Uzbek-made goods imported into the EU using the GSP system was 108 million euros. As a result of the application of reduced tariff rates, importers saved about 2.5 million euros. And the commodity goods exported using the preferences the most are textiles and clothing, plastics and plastic products, fruits, nuts, and vegetables. To obtain the status of a beneficiary of GSP+, Uzbekistan ratified 27 core international conventions on human and labor rights, including on elimination of forced and child labor in the cotton harvest, environmental and climate protection, and good governance. Despite the relative proximity to the European market, the potential for trade cooperation between Uzbekistan and EU has not yet been fully realized. Currently, the EU ranks 7th among the countries importers of products from Uzbekistan and the 3rd place among the countries exporters to the European market. At the end of the 2020, the EU accounted for 2.3% of trade of the total export volume of Uzbekistan, and the EU share in the total volume of imports of Uzbekistan amounted to 16.6%. Please, can you? Thank you. Obtaining the status of GSP+ beneficiary by Uzbekistan will create significant preconditions for the further development of trade and economic relations with the EU and diversification of export of goods to the European market. According to experts, the size of the EU market in the textile industry is $98 billion, agriculture $24 billion. Given that Uzbekistan has a real comparative advantage in the production of textile, yarn, cotton fabrics, leather, knitwear, cotton, silk, vegetables, fruit, and nuts, there is scope for increasing direct supplies of these goods to the European market. Next slide. According to the European Commission data, trade between the EU and Uzbekistan increased from 1.6 billion euros in 2010 to 2.42 billion euros in 2020. And in the structure of imports of goods from Uzbekistan, about 2/3 are finished industrial products and more than 1/3 are primary goods. Among industrial goods, textiles, chemical products, and clothing have a high share. And among primary processing goods, there is a high share of agricultural products, fuels, and mining products. At the initial stage, the main beneficiary of the GSP+ will be the textile industry, and another beneficiary will be the fruit and vegetables industry. To increase the supply of these goods to the European markets, it is necessary to ensure the quality and safety of the products in accordance with the EU standards. Next, please. The EU imports of textile products from Uzbekistan have a steady positive trend. For the last 4 years, it increased for almost 1.5 times and reached 67 million euros. Due to the reforms, the textile industry of Uzbekistan achieved to bring the internal processing of cotton fiber to 100% and increase the share of exports of finished products with high value added. The textile industry export products to exports products to more than 50 countries around the world. And the main importers of textile products from Uzbekistan are these countries, China and Turkey. The value of textile exports from Uzbekistan increased from $1.1 billion in 2016 to $2.1 billion in 2020. With the GSP status, customs rates for textile products from Uzbekistan ranged from 4 to 12%, and free of duty imports under GSP plus status include all items for textile products. It is more than 1,000 items of such commodity groups as cotton yarn, threads, non-woven fibers, carpets, fabrics, finished products, and clothing. At the same time, manufacturers of denim clothing will receive the greatest benefit due to the reduction of customs duties from 70% to 0. According to the Uz-Textile Association, the total export of textile products to the EU increased from $56.7 million in 2019 to $74.1 million in 2020. And about half of EU textile exports are cotton yarn. More than 1/5 of exports are fabric, and the share of knitwear and garment is 16.7% and 11% respectively. Textile products are mainly exported to Poland, Italy, and Germany, which account for 82.3% of total exports to the EU. Diversification of products range will significantly expand supply of the products to the European markets. The average annual capacity of the EU textile market is more than $300 billion, which opens additional opportunities to Uzbek exporters. According to the experts of the Uz-Textile Association, the expected export volume of textile products will be $300 million, with a subsequent increase to $1.2 billion by 2025. The priority areas for increasing suppliers are export of yarn and threads, fabrics, knitwear, clothing, and dairy products. For example, the markets with greatest potential for Uzbekistan's exports of apparel in EU are Poland, Germany, Italy, and Latvia. Poland showed the largest absolute difference between potential and actual exports in value terms, leaving room to realize exports worth $9 million. Leading suppliers of textiles to the EU market are Bangladesh, India, Vietnam, Indonesia, which are main beneficiaries of GSP. Other competitors in EU markets are Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Mongolia. The share of textiles in exports of these countries under the GSP Plus system is at least 80% of total exports. In order to be able to occupy a certain niche in the textile industry in the EU market, first of all, it is necessary for Uzbekistan to ensure an increase in the quality of products and their safety in accordance with European standards. In addition, while developing a strategy for promoting Uzbek textiles in the EU, it is important to study the requirements of shell companies, international brands, retailers, processing export documents, labeling of goods, and proper packaging. The status of GSP Plus beneficiary will allow not only to increase exports, but also to significantly increase the inflow of European investments and advanced technologies to Uzbekistan and create new job opportunities. In addition, it will contribute to accelerate the inclusion of Uzbek enterprise in global value chains and production networks. The development in the European market will speed up the process of reforming a number of industries through the introduction of model technologies and quality management systems. Exporters will be able to acquire new knowledge and skills, gain experience in markets with high demands, apply more modern methods of management and promotion of their goods in foreign markets. Thus, in turn, will contribute to an increase in the export of finished goods with high value added and decrease the country's commodity dependence.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gauhar. Thank you. Is Dr. Alberto Turkstas with us?
Yes.
Please, Professor Alberto from Diplomatic World Institute, Belgium. Professor, may I request you to do as much as possible short presentation?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you to the University of World Economy and Diplomacy and to Dr. Ismailova for this very timely invitation. Let me briefly pick on the theme of connectivity and make 2 points. First, the European Council earlier this week approved the conclusions on a globally connected Europe, which is building on the 2018 EU-Asia connectivity strategy, but with a broader geographical scope. The conclusions come to reaffirm the same basic principles outlined in the EU-Asia connectivity strategy, namely that connectivity should be sustainable, environmentally, socially, comprehensive, and rules-based. The narrative is that better connectivity would contribute to diversification of value chains, reduce strategic dependencies, and boost the competitiveness for the EU and its partners. Importantly, the Council conclusions stress the importance of investing in both physical infrastructure and regulatory frameworks, so both hard and soft aspects. And this is what really differentiates the EU when it comes to connectivity. Coming to Central Asia, connectivity we know remains a challenge due to the fragmented nature of the region without a common vision or approach as of yet, unlike other regions such as ASEAN, which already have a master plan on connectivity in place. Other roadblocks, such as the lack of interoperability between some corridors, also persists. And until recently, attempts to create a common economic space in Central Asia have not come to fruition. But since President Mirziyoyev's access to power in 2016, we have seen from Uzbekistan very bold initiatives to deepen regional cooperation in the field of connectivity, trade, the system of regional and international transport corridors. And as such, the geo-economic attractiveness of Central Asia as an important transit and communication hub between East and West has increased, and the EU has taken notice of this. In its connectivity partnership with India and Japan, for example, Central Asia plays an important role already. And furthermore, a dedicated EU Central Asia high-level conference on connectivity is being planned for next year. Now, when we think of connectivity in Central Asia, the Belt and Road Initiative immediately comes to the minds of most people. But the EU is a credible alternative when diversifying connectivity routes. We know that the EBRD and the EIB, so the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and the European Investment Bank, have been supporting projects in connectivity, both hard and soft, for a very long time, well before the Belt and Road Initiative saw the light of the day. And this often goes unnoticed. The second point, I would like to refer to the Tashkent summit that will be taking place later this week. We know that Tashkent aims to use the conference as a launchpad for Central Asia's deeper engagement with South Asia. And we know that the inter-regional approach is essential to harmonize rules and norms so that partners are predictable not only to each other, but to external investors who prefer to see an integrated regional market and a level playing field rather than a segmented, fragmented national markets. Both regions, Central and South Asia, have shown impressive growth rates, and South Asia, with its population of 1.9 billion, is a very promising market and economic partner for Central Asian countries. But at the moment, South Asia only accounts for 3.2% of the total Central Asia trade. So there's plenty of potential for the expansion of economic ties. Furthermore, there is a high degree of compatibility between the structure of exports of Central Asian countries and the structure of imports of South Asian countries. New transport corridors that are currently in the pipeline will furthermore improve connectivity between both regions and reduce the cost of transporting goods between South Asia and Europe through Central Asia. The new Trans-Afghan Railway will provide access to landlocked Central Asian republics to the Pakistani ports, seaports of Gwadar, Qasem, and Karachi, and dramatically increase the transit potential and cargo flow. To put one specific example, once completed, the Mazar-Sharif-Kabul-Peshawar Railroad, the transportation of goods from Pakistan to Central Asia will be reduced from 30-35 days to 10 to 15 days. and based on preliminary calculations, the development of the route will reduce the cost of transporting one 20-foot container by at least 35%. Last word for the EU, this connectivity summit will provide an opportunity to present its concept of connectivity to the region, which, as I said before, attaches equal importance to both hard and soft aspects. It is important to know that this is not an imposition. This is in line with the EU's focus on non-exclusive partnerships. We see the EU attaches great importance to the summit as it will be represented at a very high level with HRVP Josep Borrell in attendance, accompanied by the EU special representatives for Central Asia and Afghanistan, as well as the ambassador at large for connectivity. I think it will be an important test for the EU that has sometimes spoken in a language of its own and struggled to communicate its priorities, intentions, and objectives to the citizens of its partner countries. So I very much look forward to traveling to Tashkent tomorrow and to continue the discussions there on this very important topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you for joining us. I would like to say that in the first session, there was quite interesting discussion on connectivity between the Central Asia and South Asia, and also between the South Asia through the Eurasia to Europe. Thank you. The last speaker in our group is Dr. Otabek Naimov. He is the Dean of Postgraduate Education at UET. Otabek, please.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. So my name is Otabek Naimov. I study parliamentary issues. So that's why when we talk about connectivity, we above all mean connecting people. So that's why I think there is no such an institution well disposed for this task like parliaments. So in this regard, I think it's very important for us to improve parliamentary contacts, first of all with our nation parliaments with our region, then with South Asia, for example, with Indian parliament, Pakistani parliament. And here I think the European experience is very important for us. For example, such cases like Nordic Parliament or Baltic Council, Nordic Council, or the Benelux Parliamentary Assembly. These parliamentary institutions first aim to regional integration. So their experience and their kind of knowledge is very important for our region. There is no such parliamentary institution in Central Asia binding the nation parliaments of Central Asian countries, but the creation of such institution, creation of Central Asian Parliamentary Assembly or something like that, is being kind of discussed in different scholarly and political circles. So I feel the time limits, and let me conclude. So this parliamentary aspect of European integration and the creation of European Union can be very positive kind of experience for Central Asian region too. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Naimov. Very kind to be very short. Thank you so much. Now we have time for discussion and questions. Can I please, is Dr. Shabal with us? I'm so sorry, we was a little bit extending. Please, yes, Professor Pandey.
From here?
Yeah, you can come because, yeah, they couldn't listen to you. Please. By the way, we will have discussion for both sessions. So we have a question to our panelists, please.
Yes, thank you very much. A pointed question. This is again regarding the Indian initiated connectivity projects, that is International North-South Corridor, which has Russia, Iran, and India, among other countries. And the second is Chabahar project, which will have, or which has, Iran, Afghanistan, and possibly some of the Central Asian countries. What is, if any, EU's strategy and approach to these connectivity projects, and whether EU is willing to spend money and stakes in these projects? This can be a question for any of the European Professor Spruits or maybe Professor Shabal, if he is there.
Yes, Andreas, because Latvia is extremely important transit country from Eurasia to Europe. So please.
We absolutely. I mean, we would be happy to be part of the corridors. So, but I think that at the moment there are a number of ideas on different corridors. So, of course, Latvia would be. At least the discussions have been going that exactly it's not a east-west, it would be more like connecting north-south. Exactly, more connecting even with Finland, the Arctic, so and then pretty much with Belarus, but now we have some problems with Belarus. So,
but Belarus, not necessarily.
Yes,
but Russia, yes.
Yes and no, because again, if you look great number in Belarus and transit with China, then in this case, certainly the Belarus is important. With Uzbekistan, with Central Asia, we have a couple of already projects. So there is actually the transportation Belarus, Ukraine, and then it goes to the south. So there's so-called Baltica transportation route. So of course, there are a number of ideas. At the moment, I think if you look to the farther afield, what you mentioned, sort of in Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, I think at the moment it would be more like supported as a peace building project, as stability building projects. I don't think so that we can imply directly EU regulation, even though one of the debates have been. So when we speak about the Silk Road ideas, the good idea would be to sort of have a level playing field among all stakeholders who are involved. But I think at the moment, sort of those ideas which are being developed in the eastern part of Asia, they are pretty much as okay, we contribute in terms of political sort of support, but I think we would have, Europeans would have a sort of quite a little influence to impact them directly on the financial side, on the regulatory side, on politics behind it. So that's why, of course, there is a number place or interest in the play. Yeah.
Thank you. Jan, would like to make addition?
Maybe just one point.
Just
to refer to
India. No?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I've been last year. I've been in a conference with Turkish interest in private company Ekar Logistics, and Ekar is connecting now Turkey to Europe through two gates, one in Italy and one in France, and they have a vision. They have a vision to connect Scandinavia to India, and Turkey would be the turning point from Scandinavia to India, crossing Iran. And they explained that that's a private project. Ecologistic is not a large sphere, it's a mid-scale sphere, but they said that they have a strong support from the Turkish government. Because in their vision, they would interconnect population, but they would also interconnect market opportunities. And when you heard about that, you think about the Chinese, because the Chinese are the door next Piraeus port, with many trouble there. But the Chinese vision is to, I would say, invest the European network, the European market by the south, through the south, which is not so well connected compared to the north. So you would have, what I would say now to conclude is, you would have many visions and not an aggregation of many different visions, which might be compete each other's, but with some really, I would say, private interest. And you talk about peace networks. I don't think that those kind of networks are built for bringing a piece of peace. They are just bringing some value which is connected to the people who would invest in. Chinese on one hand, the Turkish on the other hand. But what I like very much is the Turkish, when they explain their project, they explain that they are the only country to be able to do it. And of course, when the Chinese said that from Paris, they would develop the south-north, or not the north-south, but the south-north corridor up to the north of Europe, you would have some, I would say, competition between two visions of a very enlarged vision of integration from Europe to Central Asia to India. And you know, this is what I would like to share with you, because it struck me that you have two different way of thinking for the same purpose, developing business. That's it. That's all. And it's so far away from the European integration vision and the, the really political approach. This is really practical. How do we do business? By connecting people. And the Turkish said, through Iran, we would be able to connect up to India. So this is really important for Central Asia because you would be part of or not, depending on interests in which you are sometimes not connected. So I guess that's really interesting to have that kind of vision of integration and connectivity defended by, I would say, nationalist vision, I would say like that. I don't know if it's the correct.
Thank you.
If I may add, I think a very interesting ideas, and just it additionally sort of made me to think about some of the issues. One is absolutely, I think that there is aggregation of different visions, there is aggregation of different interests. So I think there is a web of different ideas, and I could see also in the case of Latvia. So we've been playing with those ideas already for some time. Unfortunately, I would also say, and I think you added at the end this nationalist, political, ideological element. And I think in the previous, your presentation was excellent point on confidence. Unfortunately, I think there is trajectory with the increasing lack or shortage of confidence among Europeans and, for instance, Chinese, which I think complicate matters. So at the moment we see the importance of actually rebuilding those competencies. And again, I can see in the case of Latvia, 2, 3, 4 years ago, we were very happy to be part of the new Silk Road idea as part of 16+1, now 17+1, 17+1 minus 1, because Lithuania has dropped from a 17+1. At the moment, it seems that, well, there is quite reluctance. The US position on generally on engagement with China and also with Russia, and the Europeans to some extent have to take stances, especially those countries which are in the Central and Eastern Europe, which is very much value the security dimension and security presence of United States. So that's why everything is in development, in dynamic, and at the moment I would say there is no season in Europe for sort of the big political ambitious Eurasian, trans-Eurasian projects. Even though on practical level, I would assume the connectivity goes on. There are also the national, you can say, countries with their own specific interests. But I think in general, there is a need for a confidence rebuilding because connectivity is about confidence. I really like that point, what you made there.
Can you explain just one thing? A lack of confidence in what? In certain countries, their intentions,
yes,
or about the viability of projects?
Both. But first of all, the first one, because absolutely I think pandemic has added additionally sort of understanding that perhaps there are ideological different, you can say, entities which competing for ideological, you can say, sort of the goals globally for global influence. But I would also add the second part. I think in the Baltic case, for instance, there has been a bit of disappointment about those big connectivity projects, which actually have not come to fruition because of geographical reasons, because of economic and business reasons, but also because of some political reasons.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions or comments? Oh, Professor Shabal, are you here?
I'm sorry I disappeared, but now I reappeared.
Please, please.
So to Professor Pandey, I would like to say that I'm very happy to meet indeed a colleague who is able to decode words in between the lines. And what I said about Europe and Central Asia, not mentioning South Asia and India, is because the topic was Central Asia and Europe. But indeed, I can see we can do co-research, co-writing together on the Eurocentrism or the more objective global dynamics in the world, how regions view each other. And although I'm a French, although I'm a European, I've spent a little time, about 20 years, trying to make clear that Euro-centered views have their limitations. India, I'm very ignorant about India, but if we focus on relevant dates, I think the late 19th century.
Oh, there is some problem with connection.
with the establishment of the Wuhan corridor makes sense today, as one keeps involving India, 1998 and the nuclear tests, and 2017 and the membership of the Shanghai Organization are at least as relevant as other things. I'm glad to see that there is a PhD student from your university here, a young doctor, Dildora Khadchayeva, who graduated from your university. So I'm sure we can do research together, and I hope so. To Professor Shahan from Afghanistan, I would like to say that among questions that I think make sense for Afghanistan, not neglecting domestic issues, of course, socio-economic and socio political issues within Afghanistan. One question is, why intervention? Why move in 2001? Why stay so long for the international forces? And why pull out now? I believe in the question's whys. If you remember, Vladimir Putin asks once, forgive my Russian, Francia ve Libiu, почему? And I wrote a paper some years later on NATO v Afghanistanu, почему, published in Almaty. Indeed, we question insufficiently the reasons why forces moved in and stayed so long and pull out exactly now. Why now, why then, and why so long? The second question I think relevant for Afghanistan is the Shanghai Organization, membership or not membership. People forget when they look at Central Asia, the day 2005, the establishment of the SCO Afghanistan Contact Group, and 2012, observer status granted to Afghanistan. These have gone unnoticed, although they are extremely meaningful. And of course, the next question is full membership for Afghanistan, which is one option. But if membership is given, then that rules out the, well, how can I put it in diplomatic terms? Members share rules that would make it differently possible for members of the organization to actually play a greater role in Afghanistan. So the issue of membership is not simple because it impacts the ways in which existing members would interact with Afghanistan. I'm sure you understand what I mean by this. To Akram Umarov, I'd like to say that, and I thank him for implicitly raising the other question that is close to my heart. Why do we keep thinking of Central Asia as 5 countries? Where's the legacy of 5 countries? It comes from British geography some long time ago. But I think it is more useful, and I teach my students this, to think of Central Asia as 5 or 6 or perhaps 7 actors or entities or countries. Indeed, in many, many ways, I don't have time to explain that now. I'll do it in the autumn when I visit, hopefully, Tashkent. Central Asia is, Afghanistan is as much part of Central Asia as Turkmenistan and others. And perhaps within the Shanghai Organization diplomacy and activities, Afghanistan is to some extent more part of the dynamic than Turkmenistan, that is barely has barely guest attendance. Having said that, Turkmenistan, since to the Samarkand Forum 2017, is playing a greater part. Finally, to Faridun Satahov, I hope he gets better. I hope he gets well soon, and that he's back in his positions. I'm sorry I cannot speak short.
Thank you so much, Professor Chaval, because you were waiting for a long time. It's okay. So you have more time to speak. But is there any other questions or comments? Antonio, you wanted to say?
Yes, two very, very short things. I mean, first of all, I would like to ask to the organization to share our emails just to keep in touch, because I think the interventions, they were really interesting, and I would like to be in touch with all of you. And the second one is a general question, I mean, for all of you. Do you think it is compatible with the new situation in Afghanistan, the BOMCA project for the border management and so on and so forth, with the, I think it's going to increase the role of Russian military, I mean, the Russian army in the border between Afghanistan and, of course, absolutely Tajikistan, but also I fear I think it's going to be increased in the maybe in the Uzbek border with Afghanistan, and maybe in the Turkmen also border with Afghanistan. Of course, absolutely in the Tajik border with Afghanistan is going to be increased the number of soldiers, Russian soldiers in that border, maybe directly or maybe via the organization of the Security Treaty Organization. So this is a question for all of you. Do you think it is compatible, the BONCA project, which is a European Union project, with this increase of soldiers, of Russian soldiers in the border with Afghanistan?
Well, it depends.
On what? On what?
If Asia is to be managed by Asians, what matters really much is the status of Afghanistan vis-a-vis the Shanghai Organization, vis-a-vis the CSTO. As we well know, membership will make an immediate difference as to the possibility of military forces from Asian countries to play a similar role to the international forces until now. So the idea of quote unquote replacing NATO forces with Asian forces is on the agenda, has been on the agenda for 6 years now, since 2014, at least discussed, whether NATO forces could be replaced by Asian forces. But the moment Afghanistan will be a member of SHOS, the SCO, that becomes, in my view, impossible. And as to the CSTO, recent years have shown that intervention by CSTO forces is not on. So I seem to be suggesting that some non-Asian presence would be legitimate. In fact, I'm saying the opposite. But I'm not so familiar with the BOMCA project as you are.
Thank you, Professor. Akram, you want to say?
If I may add.
Yes, please.
In fact, border management, Afghanistan, Central Asia border management has been a priority for the Americans. They have, trained Central Asians, I believe, for the Europeans, Russians, and in a way for India as well. Farkhor has been one hospital, and I believe India has interest. Termez is a city just on the banks, on the border. I don't know whether some of these efforts can be coordinated by all these countries with the emerging situation in Afghanistan in mind. So that requires some dialogue.
No, I can add. I think it's absolutely an excellent point on this coordination and dialogue of different border managements. Of course, Latvia is part of the BOMCA. It's a very active part of BOMCA, actually one of the leading nations behind the BOMCA. And there is a new cycle, a new phase, the 10th phase from 21 to 25. And of course, there are those questions which were raised about the viability and sustainability of, let us say, the project, especially when the border is becoming much more, or border is facing much more those hard security issues. But at the same time, I exactly think that because of US and NATO troop withdrawal, because EU wants also to be present in a sense in hard and semi-hard security issues, I think the presence on the borders and also cooperation among the like-minded and non-like-minded, if I may say so, that including Chinese, including Russians, including Europeans, including Americans, and also, as you added, sort of dialogue and coordination with also the other nations, including Indians. I think actually BOMCA is even increasing its influence and sort of increasing its importance of being sort of developed and as a part of the litmus test of how EU is able to be a sort of technocratic geopolitical player in the region as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much indeed. I think
I have the last.
Yeah, Alonso, yeah, please.
In response to Alonso's comment, the first question only, not the second half question.
On emails,
On emails. We would highly appreciate if you could send your brief presentations, papers, and we are planning to publish proceedings of this event, and they can be at least, I hope, 1,000 words. but there are no upper limit. It's up to you. So, and it can be even relevant to this topic, published somewhere else already, but just have, please put your references for your previous publication and we can use it as well. And I will send this email to, on announcement on this, and I will put all emails of participant there, and you can use them for the further cooperation purposes.
Thank you. Let me once again thank all speakers and for those who participated in the discussion. Let me give the floor back to Vice Rector Gulnoza Ismailova, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I want to say just a couple of words. Thank you for your time you spent with us. I hope you're not bored. I hope you're not tired, but just to strengthen your knowledge in this sphere of these two big one conference and the little one we had today. So here's two publications in this sphere. It's about the insight and commentaries South and Central Asia, which was contributed by Professor Mirzahid Rahimov. It's about the linkage, connections, reforms, gender, ethnicity, and policies in this sphere.
Yes, Professor Anita Sengupta and I were editing this book. It was a nice volume from Central Asia, participation from scholars from United States, from Russia. So it was done 5 years back, but today, tomorrow we will have.
So it was very pragmatic. It was published 5 years ago, but it is
predicted connectivity 5 years ago.
Yes, it is still very important. So the second one is which was conducted by Professor Ulugbek Hasanov.
Yes.
It's a modern Central Asia resilience and capacity building. It's about the capacity building, about the connectivity in Central Asia, about the transformation processes in Central Asia, multilateral cooperations in Central Asia. So it's still very important and actual. And thank you so much. And I hope our new proceeding after this conference will be very important and interesting. Thank you for interesting discussions, for fruitful discussion, for your contribution to this conference. And it was very interesting to connect online and offline European Union to Central Asia, to South Asia. So it was very important. And thank you so much. And you are always welcome. If you want to be engaged and stay with us for our further conferences, events, roundtables, you can find all the information on our website. It's tashkent.eu.uz. So please be connected, be with us and publish your articles, and you are always welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye from France. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Goodbye from Spain also. Adiós. Adiós.
Adiós.
Adiós.
Hasta luego. Gracias.
Hasta luego.
Спасибо огромное. Это было просто великолепно. Спасибо.
Очень приятно вас видеть. На связи. Видите, я вижу, что
Давай, бросай. Вот Нигина будет русско-узбекский вариант, что делать. Это было великолепно. Спасибо, вы украсили нашу конференцию. Это было очень было интересно.